Hey, what's up everybody? TJ and Carrie here with Muscle Growth Mindset. We're going to hit on estrogenics today, which is, man, it's a really interesting topic. It's got my curiosity up, I guess.
Yeah.
It scares the hell out of me.
It should.
And this stuff's everywhere.
Right.
And it's can really jack your body up.
We've got a lot of information today. Got notes for the first time because there's so much to talk about.
So what is an estrogenic? People think estrogen,
Right.
But it's not exactly estrogen.
No. So what it is molecules that are estrogen-like. That means they have some of the shape of an estrogen molecule, which means with enough of them, they can actually connect to an estrogen receptor in your body, causing a variety of usually negative effects. If you're overloaded with these things, they will eventually start affecting the body. And unfortunately, they are something called lipophilic, which means they are happier with fat. So that means anything lipophilic can get stored in your body and sit there for a while.
So the fatter you are, the longer you're going to store these things.
Right, and the more often you're exposed, anything that is water soluble, it's in and out of your system quickly, right? If it's lipophilic, it's going to sit in the fat, and so these problems will compound over time. Like, you will not notice if you're exposed to it a little bit, but years and years of exposure and buildup will cause some problems.
Here's the problem, and the scary part is you're going to be exposed. There's no way to not be exposed to estrogenics.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in a second. Well, first of all, we'll start that by saying, how can you be exposed to estrogenics? It's not just like something where you eat or drink. What are all the ways that your body can, I guess, absorb estrogenics?
Okay. So that one of the things about estrogenics is that where do we get the absorption from?
Yeah.
So where are estrogen receptors in your body? The problem is that the answer is pretty much everywhere. So a few of the easy ones are that there are on the skin. So every part of your skin that's touched by an estrogenic, you're probably going to absorb estrogen into. Lungs, throat, esophagus, skeletal muscle tissue, liver. So anywhere, eating foods with estrogenics, breathing in estrogenics, these can all get you some exposure and a little buildup there.
So as long as you don't eat, drink, breathe, or touch anything, you're good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you'll be free of estrogen, so there'll be no problems at all.
Good. So there's we're going to go through a list of estrogenics, the top 10.
Right.
And it's a pretty extensive list here. We're going to tell you a little bit about what they are and where they come from. And then at the end, we're going to tell you some ways to avoid these. Kind of, like I said, I don't know if there's a way to avoid it completely, but if you can limit your exposure, it's definitely going to be beneficial. And we'll hear why as we go along.
Let's go over a few of the general effects of all estrogenics first. I think we were talking about this last week. You remember I was telling you about the problem with estrogenics is many articles start with male feminization when it comes to estrogenics. So we were talking about how the exposure of estrogenics changes the hormone balance in the human body, as well as animals that it gets involved in. So the fortunate thing is they are stored in fat, and one of the things estrogenics do is they increase the amount of fat on your body. So they are stored in fat and increase the fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they feed off each other.
Yes.
The more fat you have, the more estrogenics or estrogen you store, and the more estrogen or estrogenics you have, the fatter you get.
Yes.
Just go back and forth.
Yeah. With that, it also does, once it builds up in the fat and increases, so it's a cycle that feeds on itself. Increases insulin resistance, which increases the fat on your body. Increases depression cases. It also increases instances of apathy in young men. There were some stats that maybe don't correlate 100%, but back in the 1950s, schools were predominantly 70% males, and they've been decreasing after a while to where they're about 40% or less. Now that may not be directly because of the increase in estrogenics and testosterone drop, but it's known to increase apathy in men. Membership in boys sports has been on the decline since the 50s, so this could be correlated. There's a couple other things. Early onset puberty has been happening since the 50s when estrogenics were introduced, and doctors even thinking about lowering the age of puberty so that these things aren't considered anomalies anymore. Yeah,
it doesn't seem like the right fix.
No, it doesn't. I get a lot of this information. I wasn't sure where to go for this because I was thinking it was fear mongering. So I found a scientist that does a lot of good research, and I went back through a lot of the research papers he talks about, and I really liked. So I bought his book. This guy, Dr. Anthony J, has a lot of this information here if you want more. But he identifies the top 7 problems that estrogens do, and they're fat gains, depression, hormonal disruption, so male feminization, immune dysfunction, blood clotting, cancer, and fertility issues. So we know it disrupts a lot of the hormones in the human body.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, estrogenics cause a lot of bad stuff.
Right. So some of these guys are even theorizing that the reason there's more transgender and issues with men is because of estrogenics in the world.
Well, there's definitely some science behind that. I mean, like you said, the feminization from estrogenics, it definitely happens. It lowers free testosterone, and
it definitely causes disruptions through the hormonal system, which can cause confusion. Not that there's anything wrong with people being transgender, but the negative responses to it, if we can avoid people having to go through that, that would be a something.
Yeah. But you can tell that there's definitely an increase over the past 20, 30, 50 years.
Yes.
Yes, there were homosexuals in the 50s. Yes, there was probably some transgenders in the 50s. It was more frowned upon than it is now. But I think there's definitely an increase in the number.
Yeah.
And I think more people are identifying more men are identifying as females, and this is probably a good reason why. Their bodies have changed, and another thing, it can be passed on genetically too, right? This isn't just something. If you are exposing yourself to this stuff, it doesn't just affect you. This is going to be passed on to your kids and your kids' kids. So that's a scary thought.
In fish and rats, they see it second, third, and fourth generation, and sometimes increasingly worse as it goes on into the next generations. And you've got to figure in humans, we're in first and second generation.
Yeah.
So these effects have not been finalized.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the top 5. There are 10 major sources of estrogenics. I think we're gonna have enough time to talk about the top 5, and then we'll probably split this up into 2 videos and get the other 5 and ways to avoid them or decrease estrogenics in the body in the second video.
All right, so number 1, what's the one on the list?
This one's pretty easy. It's phytoestrogens. So we know that there are some estrogen-like molecules in black beans. They're like 9.
Phyto means
plant, right? So phytochemicals.
These are plant-based estrogens.
Phytoestrogens, right? Like black beans have 1 microgram per deciliter, so you got a little bit in black beans. So flax has 400,000 and soy has 100,000 micrograms. So
there's a lot of supposedly health benefits with flaxseed. A lot of people, they add that to their diet. So this isn't necessarily a good thing. This may be something we got to consider. If you're considering the estrogenics of a black bean being 1 and in flax 400,000.
Exactly.
It's off the charts.
I would avoid flax and soy at any point at all. I've heard about flax increasing your estrogen before then. I'd avoid it for a while. I heard about soy.
Yeah.
People like to use their soy sauce, or if they're doing a no meat diet, they're doing soy products. I would find another alternative.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question. What about male versus female? Like, obviously, estrogen's a predominantly female hormone. Is there a difference on how estrogenics affect males versus females?
So it's a really good question.
Is it
and
something
it's common.
where should women be concerned, or is it just something for guys to be concerned with?
Women need to be concerned. So a lot of reasons, and I'll just go through them real quick. So number one, pass it on to your children. Estrogenics, precocious puberty. Women hitting puberty a lot earlier. Number two. Women have an average about 40 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone in their system, and if by increasing estrogenics increases sex hormone binding globulin, decreases total testosterone. Testosterone is associated with longevity and decrease in cancer and sex drive, and if those things are important to you, then I would be concerned.
Yeah.
Also, most of these estrogenics, you'll find one of the things that said was cancer. So a massive increase with estrogenics increases chances of cancer and heart attack. I was actually listening to the guy talking about statins and cholesterol, and they even tried to experiment with estrogen because they believed it was going to reduce incidence of heart disease, and they had to stop that almost immediately because people were having heart attacks left and right. So that was natural estrogen. These are artificial estrogenics, but it still has a lot of the same effects on the body.
What about reproduction?
Yes, fertility.
Yes.
So I think of that movie Children of Men, where nobody had babies for like 30 years, and it was a depressing future. If for fish and for frogs and for other creatures that are in the water that have these estrogenics in it, their fertility drops enormously until some of them like no longer produce after the first generation.
Scary.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So phytoestrogens, back to phytoestrogens, they are the least worrisome because we have bacteria in our stomach that has been handling this kind of stuff for our entire evolution. So it's something that it can shrug off a lot faster.
Okay. So it's number one on the list, but it's not number one as far as the list of being concerned.
Oh, definitely not. It gets worse.
So the big ones, as far as phytoestrogens, would be flax, soy.
Soy. Pretty much that's all you really need to worry about.
Okay. Good.
Just remove those from your diet. So number two is mycoestrogen. Myco being mold. So there's only really one, but it's pretty major. It's called ZEA. It's got a longer scientific name, but we'll just go with ZEA since everything I've read it's the ZEA. So in Russia, they have restricted that their feed, the grains have to have less than 1,000 micrograms, and Europe is under 20 to 350 micrograms. In America, there's no restriction at all. You can find them in cereals, grains, and especially animal feed. A lot of places in Russia and Europe that have too much ZEA, they'll sell it to America. Mostly probably to be used as animal feed, but it passes down, so it gets into, they know that if they feed this to their pigs, that they no longer are going to be having babies. So that a lot of people avoid this ZEA just because they learn better from trial and error, but not everybody knows it.
Well, it's scary and sad to think that, because we came across this quite a bit with, like you said, Russia has certain restrictions.
China.
Europe, China, they have restrictions on different estrogenics, and ours is a lot less restricted.
There's only a couple things. I'll tell you which ones US has, but there are very few restrictions. Yeah, there's capitalism is good for most things, but sometimes when
it's not good for estrogenics.
Yes, because if you restrict this, we're going to make less money. Well, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. At what cost?
At what cost? ZEA also reduces milk production in cows, so they also have to learn. A lot of cow farmers or dairy farmers have learned to find out where the mold is and reduce that. So these are important. I'm going to start getting to the ones that are really scary soon. Number 3 on the list is atrazine. It is the second most common pesticide used in the world, second only to glyphosate. Glyphosate, we all know that it's a big cancer-causing chemical. Atrazine is estrogenic. So it's been banned in Europe entirely. Back in 2004, they got rid of it. So some of the effects that atrazine has is They would find out by happenstance. So they'd be using atrazine, and it would get into a pond, and then they would find out the frogs in the pond were no longer producing, or sometimes they would all become female. They're like, all the frogs in this pond are female, so there's no more eggs. So different scientists have measured the various levels of atrazine. Some of them found that it chemically castrates frogs even in tiny doses. Some of them turn into female, depending on the species. And I saw one, and I had to, because he gave me some of these links to these articles, so I went and researched the articles, and I found a lot more. One of them had pictures of ovaries formed inside testicles in frogs. So literally these frogs are
physiologically turning into female.
Hermaphrodite, transgender. They're turning transgender just because of this pesticide. And they no longer even know what sex they are. I don't know. It's a pretty frightening concept. But like I said, banned in Europe, free reign to use here, second most used herbicide in America. Pretty scary stuff. All right, so number 4 is triclosan and alkyl phenols, otherwise known as APEs. These are your soap estrogenics, so you're going to find these in soap. Triclosans have to be on the label, so it's something you can look and find out, while APEs are not, because there's a huge variety. They can change one, they can methylate one end, and they can call it a different, they've got nonal phenols, and anyway, so the APEs are, they're in almost every kind of soap out there. So they're a surfactant, and they cause the bubbles. So triclosan is a germ killer. Now APEs in EU, most of them have been banned. In China, they're severely restricted. In the USA, there's nothing.
Once again, China, Europe, they're putting restrictions on this, but nothing here in the States.
So some of the papers you can look up, triclosan, it's like I said, it's a germ killer. So one of the papers is spontaneous abortion in mice and humans. So they found some people that had, they knew that mice had spontaneous abortions. They found people that had, unfortunate chemical abortions, and they went and found out that the cause of it was because of triclosan, or most of them had the triclosan in their system. So another one is the estrogenic effects of nonal phenol. So you can just look up these to see some of the effects on the body of these estrogenic chemicals.
That's scary. I mean, that's soap. And these certain soaps, if you use them, could cause you to lose your baby.
Yes.
This is some serious stuff.
Now, and what I would be wary of is being in public, those liquid soaps, they're going to buy the cheap stuff. Maybe just bring some disinfectant for your hands instead.
Yeah.
And then you can, at home, you can make sure you've got stuff that is more natural, has no triclosan and less APEs. So, but yeah, if you're out in public and there's a public bathroom with those liquid soaps, cheap ones, yeah, just don't use them. Yeah. Disinfect your hands. Yeah. All right, number 5. It's benzophenone and 4-methylbenzylidine, or BP and 4-MBC. These are your sunscreen estrogenics. Yeah. So remember, they're on your skin. So putting these things in your skin. 4-MBC has been banned in Europe. One of the interesting things to note on the sunscreen estrogenics is that because of the energy of light, when you put these estrogenics, if you find them in your sunscreen, then light will make them stick in the estrogen receptor, kind of glue them on, so that they're affecting you for longer. Yeah.
And of course, if you're using sunscreen, you're going to be in the light.
Yes. So that's the whole point. Yeah. So it's going to cause effects for longer. I'm not going to get too far into it. There's more in here about the sunscreen estrogenics.
And it's not in all sunscreens, so don't think just wearing sunscreen is going to cause this. There's certain sunscreens that have it.
Yes.
So and what is it you want to look for in the label?
Benzophenone and 4-methylbenzylidine, BP and 4-MBC, and sometimes they have other names too, which is really where it gets confusing. But I would use.
We'll give a prize to anybody that can spell those.
But like I said, if you can look up sunscreen estrogenics if you want to get some extra work in there and try to get rid of those from your sunscreen and get a better sunscreen. So less estrogenics. All right. So we're already into about 20 minutes of recording. So we're definitely splitting this up into two. For the next one, we're gonna come back, tell you the next 5, which are, these first 5 are fairly easy. Some of these are everywhere. So a little kind of scary, but we're gonna give you some solutions and go through some more of what Dr. J's book has for you. So,
all right, so those are the first 5. Look out for the next video and get the last 5 and the solutions that's coming up.
Yep.
So until then,
don't forget rule number 1.
Hey everybody, I hope you really enjoyed our video. Please like and subscribe if you did.
And if you want to see more, or if you have any questions, leave some comments. Thanks for watching.